TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world.
Number one, the cosmological argument. The question of why anything at all exists is the most profound question of philosophy. The philosopher Derek Parfit says, no question is more sublime than why there is a universe, why there is anything, rather than nothing. Typically, atheists have answered this question by saying that the universe is just eternal and uncaused. But there are good reasons, both philosophically and scientifically, to think that the universe began to exist.
Do you believe that the universe is eternal, AP?
Of course, a very significant question that different philosophers have talked about and different perspectives exist today. I mean, I think the main idea is that humans don't definitely know what the actual explanation is, whether the universe had a beginning or not, whether it always existed or not. But we have certain theories, of which the Big Bang theory is the most credible one because it has the biggest amount of evidence, which points at the idea that the universe came into existence at some point, or at least began to expand at some point. But we don't know what exactly caused it, what exactly came before it. There are different hypotheses around that as well. I don't know. The way I view it, it's like it's something where I can go with the best explanation at the moment, while also keeping all kinds of possibilities open. And to me, when I think about it, I consider it as a possibility that the universe existed, always existed, was always there, or that that maybe something beyond what we describe as the universe always existed, and that the universe as we describe it is a part of all that. And then you can go into all kinds of different ideas of a multiverse and all of that, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. We don't have
I actually agree with the arguments that our universe had a beginning. So the question is there something? Yeah, what's before that? Yeah, so but
that's
again,
the whole problem here.
yeah, I'm sympathetic to Hume's response that you're getting very far away from your experience when you're talking about things like that.
The Big Bang Theory is less than 100 years old. The discovery of different galaxies is less than 100 years old. All kinds of the cosmological model as we have it today, as it still develops, all of this happened like within the last 100 years on an advanced scale. It is still there are still different explanations that are not entirely discredited that may be possible. Like, for example, the whole cyclic models, or the big bounds, that the universe is something that repeatedly breaks and pops and comes into existence again, goes to a certain point, breaks and pops into existence again, and so on. That there is an infinite process that is going on, that there is no beginning to it, but which would explain the Big Bang as simply part of that process, because it would explain that the universe began from a certain point, but that it is not part of the ultimate beginning of everything. It is just part of the beginning of this certain process that we are in, until the universe collapses and then another Big Bang happens. I mean, it might not sound reasonable to everyone, might not make sense to everyone, and there's a lot of discussion around it, a lot of arguments against it scientifically, but it is a possibility. It is one of the ideas, one of the arguments that are still around.
Yeah, guys, for anyone who doesn't know why this stuff is pretty recent, as AP pointed out, it's pretty recent to be talking about the Big Bang and so on. And that's because lots of people back in the day, including people like Einstein, thought the universe is like, just static. It's just the way it is. It's just stay there, and for all we know, maybe forever. But then it was people are looking. So you got people like Hubble and stuff looking at stars and so on, and noticing that the light patterns aren't matching up with other patterns and so the question is, what are they? Are these made of some other substance or something like that, because it's not matching up? And then it gets suggested, well, maybe it's massively red shifted, meaning when things are moving away from you very fast, like the Doppler effect, right? So if a siren, police car is going by you, the sound of the siren changes as it's going by you, because at first it's moving towards you and then it's moving away from you. And so the question became, well, maybe these are actually normal light, but it's so massively red shifted that it looks, it looks different now. And so that's what it turned out to be. And so then they figure out, oh, actually the universe is expanding really, really, really rapidly. And so if the universe is expanding, then you can say, well, what happened in the past? Well, it looks like everything was, started off at a point in the past. Anyway, that's my take on it as a non-scientist, but anyway, that's pretty recent, and so all of that stuff is recent, and then you have Big Bang, and then trying to make sense of it scientifically, and so on. But then then they're getting into like singularities and how do you get a universe, and does the universe come out of nothing, and so on, and then people basing arguments on the most recent scientific theories and so on. And so what AP's pointing out, and what I would agree with is, the theories change sometimes. Like, a new dominant theory might come along in 10 years, or a theory that's been somewhat discredited might make a comeback, and so on. So it's just basically, just be careful how you're proceeding based on the latest, scientific theory.
Philosophically, the idea of an infinite past seems absurd. Just think about it. If the universe never began to exist, that means that the number of past events in the history of the universe is infinite. But mathematicians recognize that the existence of an actually infinite number of things leads to self-contradictions. For example, what is infinity minus infinity? Well, mathematically, you get self-contradictory answers. This shows that infinity is just an idea in your mind, not something that exists in reality. David Hilbert, perhaps the greatest mathematician of the 20th century, wrote, "The infinite is nowhere to be found in reality. It neither exists in nature nor provides a legitimate basis for rational thought. The role that remains for the infinite to play is solely that of an idea."
That's one of the main steps of the Kalam cosmological argument, because if you based a cosmological argument just on the Big Bang, that wouldn't be the Kalam cosmological argument. The Kalam cosmological argument historically is focused on the idea, because notice that this argument existed before you had evidence from the Big Bang. So
Yeah.
Arguing for the beginning of the universe based on the Big Bang is different from the Kalam argument, which argued for the same thing, but not based on science. It was a philosophical and mathematical argument based on the idea that if you say the universe has existed for all eternity, then you're saying that we have, in order to get to the present, we have traversed an actual infinite, right? Like we have traversed an infinite amount of time, an infinite amount of hours, an infinite amount of days, an infinite amount of years, and so on. To get to the present, we have traversed an infinite. And lots of people historically have had a problem with the idea that you can traverse an infinite. So that's part of the Kalam cosmological argument. And then Craig combines that with the idea that you have, you end up with mathematical absurdities if you think that an infinite number of anything, an infinite collection of days, weeks, anything is possible, because you end up with things like, so notice if you've traversed, and if the universe has existed for all eternity, then how many 24-hour periods have gone by? Well, infinite. How many years have gone by? Infinite. And you end up with some weird mathematical issues if you start adding and subtracting and so on in infinites and so on. And so that's the general idea. What's your take on that part of it, the Kalam part?
The whole infinite regress idea, of course, comes up all the time as part of different cosmological arguments, not just the Kalam cosmological
That's
argument.
true. Mm.
And but also the argument as we have it today is has been developed by William Lane Craig and others from, as you pointed out, from a cosmological argument that has been in existence for a much longer time, for I don't know 2,000 years or maybe even more, and back in he references Imam Ghazali very often, who apparently also adopted the cosmological argument upon which William Lane Craig expanded his argument. Uh, Ghazali didn't know about the universe. He didn't know about the beginning of the universe. He didn't know about the Big Bang. He didn't know about stars, planetary systems, galaxies, and all that. All he did know or think was that everything begins to exist. The world obviously began to exist because everything begins to exist. He didn't have any proof for any of that at all. He didn't even come close to the evidence of a Big Bang. His idea was only everything begins to exist, and the universe also obviously began to exist. And if it began to exist, it was, brought into existence by something, because everything must have a cause. Of course, William Lane Craig today, with the help of the Big Bang theory and other explanations, expands on that and says we know that the universe came into existence or started at some point, and everything that comes into existence has a cause. Therefore, the universe also has a cause, and then that somehow leads to God, which we will see further in this whole discussion here, in this argument as he makes it. I have a problem with the part where there are many problems, but one problem is the reference to numbers and mathematics and the impossibility of an infinite regress. As far as I am aware, it is not absolutely considered impossible that there is an infinite past or infinite regress, or that the universe could have been into existence forever. If that was a contradiction in logic, it would have been just refuted and thrown out the window. As he puts it, as far as I understand it, it is simply for us at this point inconceivable to think of an infinite regress, or to think of infinity without a cause in such a way that the universe always existed and that there has been an infinite number of days. But I think the problem here is, I'm not an expert in any of these fields, but as far as I see it and understand it, the problem here is that just because it is at this point in time for us hard to understand or inconceivable, that doesn't necessarily mean that this therefore means it must be untrue, and that this is somehow conclusive evidence that there is no infinite past, or that the universe cannot be infinite. I just think it is, to an average layman like me, or maybe to others as far as I have seen it, not sufficient as evidence, right? And coming to the beginning, I think we'll go further into that anyway as he expands it. But yeah, let's just go ahead and we can respond to the whole idea of the universe having a beginning
Yeah,
when he comes to it.
this was an interesting comment here. He says, basically, are the philosophical arguments better than the scientific evidence? So the question is, you have the scientific evidence for a Big Bang and theories related to that, but then you have philosophical arguments based on the idea of, well, actually, you could break it down into three, because the saying, arguing that it's impossible to traverse an actual infinite, that's not really a mathematical argument. That's a philosophical argument. Pointing
Yeah.
out mathematical absurdities, mathematical problems when you're dealing with surreal numbers, that's like infinity plus infinity or infinity plus two and so on. That's a mathematical issue. And then you have the scientific. So yeah, like, here's the thing. I agree with the points, but I'm sort of on a similar page with AP, and I don't think it's like airtight, right? Like,
Yeah.
so in other words, yeah, it looks like the universe had a beginning. If it's expanding and you trace it back, it looks like it started that way. It does sound really, really, really weird to think of traversing an actual infinite. Like in order to get here, we've crossed an infinite.
Yeah.
Like if someone arrived and said, and he said, "Hey, how long you been going?" "Oh man, I'm immortal, but I traveled an infinite number of miles." It's like, what the heck are you even talking about? It doesn't sound like it's even possible. And then the mathematical absurdities would be where I have the least grasp of it, so I'm not exactly sure what to say. But it is interesting that they're all kind of pointing in the same direction as far as there seems to be a problem with the universe existing forever. But here's the thing. You don't have to say I'm 100% confident of this. You can have evidence that leans you and points you in a
Yeah.
certain direction,
Yeah.
and hold to that tentatively. There was a I don't actually philosophical argument. So the question whether the philosophical argument is better than the scientific evidence, I think that's going to depend on the person, right? I think that's going to depend on person. Do you have more respect for philosophical arguments, or are you more impressed by actual what people are saying with telescopes and then formulating scientifically?
That's one of the problems with philosophy in this field. It sounds a little bit insulting when I say it, but I really don't mean it that way. But it's like philosophy is interesting and intriguing and really feels pleasurable to the mind and all. But much of philosophy also consists of explaining certain ideas based on what we know so far, without giving us any documentation, but by referencing documentation that we have. So it's basically just okay, here's everything that we have. Now what are we going to do with this? Well, this seems plausible, that seems plausible, that seems implausible, and so on. It is a lot of mind training, much of which doesn't necessarily lead us to anything conclusive. It's just we're just playing with ideas.
But that entails that since past events are not just ideas, but are real, the number of past events must be finite. Therefore, the series of past events can't go back forever. Rather, the universe must have begun to exist.
Okay, can you pause
This
for a second?
conclusion has been confirmed by remarkable discoveries.
What's that?
So I know we pause very frequently. I just want to add very quickly to this whole idea. As far as I see it, I cannot be. I don't see, a documentation or a proof that it is therefore absurd or impossible for an infinite number of events in the past to exist. Like I think about this very often. I think about, as he pointed out, one of the most difficult or most profound questions is, why does anything exist at all? And I think about the Earth or the world or a flat land as a hypothetical place that has been in existence forever, instead of just the universe with all the space that it has. It is very hard for me and for anyone to think that that land or this world has been in existence forever, for eternity, that there was no beginning to it at all. It has always been in existence. It never began to exist. And that everything that is on there just pops into existence. This is, or just grew out of it or came into existence somehow. But that the land was there forever. It is very hard to think about, very hard to comprehend. It hurts. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's impossible, right? I mean,
Yeah, and really, it was common, several years ago to claim that this or that is impossible and so on. But I think in recent years, Craig has stated it in such a way that as to say, like, it's massively improbable or something like that.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
and by the way, guys, keep in mind, most of the stuff you believe, you're dealing with probabilities rather than absolute certainties about certain things. There's very little where you could just say there's no possible way to be wrong here. That would be like certain like mathematical things. And Descartes would even disagree with that. He would say, hey, every time you add 2 plus 2, it's possible. He's not arguing that this is true. He's just saying there is room for skepticism if you wanted to. It's possible that every time you add 2 plus 2, a powerful, demon deceives you into thinking that you know the answer when you're actually getting it wrong. So again, he doesn't believe that. He thinks that's totally wrong. He repudiates that. But the point there is, There's very little that that goes through our minds that you can't doubt in some sense, and so a lot of what we believe we have to base on probabilistic evidence and so on. And so anyway, so we have the idea of traversing and infinite. We have the mathematical absurdities and the scientific evidence for the origin of the universe. And so the question is, where's Craig going to go from there? Let's see. Let me rewind it a couple seconds because I think he's mid sentence here.
Okay, pause. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go back forever. Rather, the universe must have begun to exist. This conclusion has been confirmed by remarkable discoveries in astronomy and astrophysics. In one of the most startling developments of modern science, we now have pretty strong evidence that the universe is not eternal in the past, but had an absolute beginning about 13 billion years ago in a cataclysmic event known as the Big Bang. What makes the Big Bang so startling is that it represents the origin of the universe from literally nothing.
And that's the tough part for a lot of people. But I've read through I think he's going to quote PCW Davies and so on. But man, you want to try getting your mind around something, you will actually see physicists and cosmologists saying that it came from nothing, and they don't mean some pre-existent small thing or something like that. They're saying just nothing, which, man, that's weird.
Here's the thing: when you refer to the science of the most popular ideas behind what there was before the Big Bang, even when it is when said there was nothing before it, what is really meant is often not nothing. What is meant is just that that whatever there was, it cannot be described as something because it is, you know. It may be the initial singularity where space and time do not matter at all, which is why it is basically nothing. Only when it expands, something comes into existence, or even prior to that, fluctuations, energy, were at such a low, insignificant level that it is almost nothing, but it's not really nothing. It's not nothing as in there was absolutely nothing in existence. It is rather that there is an origin in existence that refers to almost nothing at all. It's a difficult idea to even to wrap your head around. But I mean, that is even the point is even that is a discussion. There is no unanimous agreement, even among those who argue that there was nothing, that there was absolutely nothing before.
But that's the weird part. They'll say so. The claim is that energy, matter, and time itself all had their beginning at the Big Bang, and so there's the claim is just there's none of that beforehand, and so there's nothing. But I would agree with that comment earlier. Like now you're getting really far from our own from experience and stuff.
Yeah,
so how do you even discuss that sort of thing? Like
it is.
It doesn't seem like our minds are well equipped to be talking about stuff before the Big Bang or something like that, or what it's like for something to be like before time even came into, because time, before is a temporal word, so it's weird to even talk about the word something before time. Anyway, weird stuff going on.
Here's the issue. Like there's something I think about quite often that makes me really sad when I think about it. It's very depressing. The question: will it ever be possible, or when will it be possible to engage in intergalactic travel? To leave our galaxy and to travel to a different galaxy. And the most common answer right now is, as far as we see it, as far as we can foresee the development of our technology, it may never be possible for humans to leave our galaxy, let alone to travel to a different galaxy. And we would have to leave the galaxy in order to look back and see what our galaxy actually looks like. Because just traveling to the edge of our galaxy would take, I don't know, at this point, how much was it? Like billions of years? going to the closest galaxy would be, I think, with the current technology of how much we how much time we need to travel one light year, it would take 90 billion years or something like that. And if the technology could advance significantly beyond this, maybe it would be considered possible in some, in millennia, maybe in centuries, if we somehow managed to travel in the speed of light. But even then, it would take a long time. But at the current stage, it is considered impossible to even conceive, even think of a way of traveling between galaxies. When we are at this stage, and you are basically trapped in this part of the universe, of this giant thing, it is very hard for me to rely on the human mind, which only found different galaxies 100 years ago, and to say, well, okay, we clearly know how it began, we clearly know where it began and when it began, and we have certain knowledge on this, and we can therefore conclude that it must have started from some point, and that there was definitely nothing before that, and that nothing must have been that something must have been brought into existence out of nothing by some other agent, and so on. These are just very tough questions that I think, no matter how far you are in the philosophy, in the science, you simply do not have conclusive, certain answers to, which you can spread to the world and make people accept. These are existential, hard questions, which is why I always resort to just adopting this absurdist point of view and saying, there is no way for me to ever, in my lifetime, come to a certain conclusion. So the best thing I can do is just to not be existentially worried about it. I can still, of course, explore it, but I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as, getting some sort of like certainty out of something like that, then I would agree. I think what you can really do is sort of say, well, that makes sense, and then build some. You could build. As far as I'm concerned, you could build something on, hey, that really makes sense, or things point in that direction. So I think I think you can say, okay, it really looks like the universe had a beginning, but then where do you go from there? Because then, you can say there's lots of evidence that the universe had a beginning, but then once you start going into came from nothing, or trying to figure out what caused that or something like that, you're quickly getting further and further from into areas where you might not want to trust your. Now keep in mind, I agree with the argument. But it's not in the sense of this is absolutely certain, or really even any part of it is absolutely certain. It's more along the lines of, yeah, it looks like there's a beginning, and it looks like this, and it looks like that, and so on. But yeah, let's see. So he's talking about science, the scientific evidence right now, right?
For all matter and energy, even physical space and time themselves, came into being at the Big Bang. As the physicist P.C.W. Davies explains, the coming into being of the universe, as discussed in modern science, is not just a matter of imposing some sort of organization upon a previous incoherent state, but literally the coming into being of all physical things from nothing. Now, this puts the atheist in a very awkward position. As Anthony Kenny of Oxford University urges, a proponent of the Big Bang Theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the universe came from nothing and by nothing. But
dumb atheists. Did you hear that, everyone? So the universe came from nothing, and so AP has to believe that it came from nothing by nothing, whereas, see, a theist can say it came from nothing, but not by nothing. It came by God.
Yeah. Here is the issue. It's actually very good to point out the distinction between from nothing and by nothing. First off, as far as I'm aware, I disagree that if you agree with the Big Bang, you must agree that everything came into existence out of nothing and that there was nothing prior to it. I don't think that there is actually that there is like a unanimous answer or an agreement on that. There are still possibilities, still options open. And as said, this is a very relatively new idea, considering that we have thousands of years of history and we have 100 years of the Big Bang Theory. But here is the thing. I think there is one very interesting distinction to talk about, which is everything that came into existence has a cause. Nothing can come into existence out of nothing. The universe also came into existence. It must have come out of nothing, from nothing, which is absurd. Therefore, it was brought into existence by something. But here is the thing: if you want to compare this to real examples in our world that you explore, can you point at something in our time that we know to be real, which was brought into existence by an agent out of nothing? No, there is no such thing. There is nothing that you can point at in our universe which was brought into existence by somebody or by something out of nothing. Everything that exists in our universe that is created is merely a rearrangement of matter. People or things put something together to create something out of something else. Therefore, you can't really compare the universe to anything that we know. So you can't really make a logical comparison here and say everything that comes into existence comes into existence is created by something. Therefore, the universe which came into existence also was created by something, because you can't really compare that. The universe, according to this theory, according to this idea, came into existence out of nothing, not out of something created by somebody else.
Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. I think the point you're making is the idea that the universe must have a cause if it came out of nothing is, I mean, that's like a philosophical claim, right? Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You're saying that's not based in any experience. We have experience of things coming into existence, but they're coming into existence from previously existing things.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about something coming into existence from nothing, we have no experience of that, and so it's difficult to make claims. So really, it's just sort of, okay, at least I can get my mind around an agent that is really powerful being able to make something, whereas I can't get my mind around just nothing giving rise to something. And that's, but yeah, I agree that's, once you're talking about something coming out of nothing, then you're getting pretty far beyond our experience.
Yeah.
But I understand the point. One, I can get my mind around. The other, I was like, whoa, what in the world is going on there? But I think what you're saying is the entire idea of something coming out of nothing is something that's already so far beyond anything in our experience that probably
it's incomparable. You don't have any example to it. I mean, you cannot name a single example of something actually coming into existence out of nothing, or something being brought into existence out of nothing. So the universe is something beyond our comprehension, something that you can compare nothing real to, and nothing you cannot document anything similar to it. And when you now go with a theological argument here and use this entire argument to come to the conclusion that that there is a God, because only God would have could have brought into existence the universe out of nothing, then you are actually shifting the point here. And instead of talking about how something comes into existence out of nothing, you're suddenly switching to how something comes into existence by somebody else, or by an entity, or by something. But that was not the whole point of of things coming into existence.
All right, so we got about a minute left.
Surely that doesn't make sense. Out of nothing, nothing comes. So why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? Where did it come from? There must have been a cause which brought the universe into being. Now, as the cause of space and time, this being must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well.
If time and space, matter, all of that comes into existence with the universe, and if he's right that something else caused the universe, then it sounds like you're talking about, before there's matter and even time and space, and therefore the cause you'll be talking about is immaterial, it's beyond time. The argument is basically you're starting to sound like God in whatever the cause here, and powerful enough to create the universe from nothing pre-existent. So you're dealing with something really, really powerful, and outside of time and immaterial. So, but let's go ahead and let him finish up here.
Why? Because the cause must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Now, there are only two kinds of things that fit that description. Either an abstract object, like numbers, or else a personal mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. Therefore, it follows that the cause of the universe is a transcendent, intelligent mind. Thus, the cosmological argument gives us a personal creator of the universe.
All right. So that last point there was, so again, if time and space and matter all come into existence with our universe, then whatever causes our universe must be, timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, but also powerful enough to create the universe. That's sounding like God. But then Craig also points out that it would have to be personal. In other words, something that's capable of making decisions. Because if you're talking about something that exists in some sense, but it's immaterial and timeless, they're abstract objects like that, like numbers, right? Like you might say they exist in some sense, but it's not like it's not something in time. You can have a specific number of something, but like two, the number two is it's called an abstract object, meaning it's not something you find. It's like more like a concept in a mind. But abstract objects don't cause things. They don't make things. They don't make things happen. So he's saying, if you're talking about something timeless and immaterial, there are abstract objects like that, but they can't be the sort of thing that caused the universe. And therefore, if you want something that could cause the universe, it would have to be personal, meaning something that can decide to create the universe. And so the point is, he's saying, so you've got something that's immaterial, timeless, spaceless, powerful enough to create a universe from nothing, and personal. And the claim is that and I would agree, that's starting to sound like God. And so, I mean, matter of fact, sounds a lot like God. And so the question is, how much do you trust the reasoning that leads to that conclusion? All right, what are your thoughts, AP?
I just have a very small problem here, which is the whole bridge that we make between it must have a cause, and the cause must be something that is immaterial beyond this space and time that must have created it, and all of that. It relies a lot on the idea, on the modern idea, that space and time comes into existence not into an already pre-existing space, but rather space itself only comes into existence with the expanding universe. It starts at some point. So there was no space, there was no time, there was nothing. Space only begins to exist and to expand from a certain point. Therefore, God, if he creates the universe, must be in no space, or must be beyond space, beyond time. But this is, again, a big philosophical step to make, because if we do accept the idea that the universe which we have begins to expand from a certain point, and that this universe is what creates space and time, does it really mean that that outside of this there couldn't be some other space that is parallel to this, or independent from this, or beyond this, and that God, for example, exists within that space, within that time? We're going into a whole field, into a region that is very hard to explore in your mind, and very hard to make an actual case for. And I don't know, it's difficult to somehow deliver the idea that cause must be outside of or independent from it all, which doesn't even fit perfectly with scriptural with an old ancient scriptural understanding of God, where you have God being above or inside a certain place, and moving in a certain place before creating the world and everything that is within it.
You
But yeah,
you do have.
deep stuff.
I mean the traditional the traditional Christian doctrine is creation ex nihilo, so creation out of nothing. So um, and that just means that God is the ultimate source of everything. So it's not like he's among other things and then using these other things to create. Although you do have some stuff in Genesis where it talks about like this. It sounds like there's this primordial chaos and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So for me, I mean, it's a weird situation because it's almost like, can I use my reasoning with this stuff? Like that's the question. And how much can I trust my reasoning with these kinds of issues? Because it really looks like the universe had a beginning. The arguments for why the universe had a beginning make a lot of sense. So it's like, how much do I trust the fact that it makes it makes sense to me that the universe had a beginning? Like it really does seem absurd to traverse an actual infinite, and it really does look like, okay, well, I mean, the universe is expanding, and so it looks like you could trace it back to an initial bang or something like that. So that makes sense. And then if the options are out of nothing by nothing, or out of nothing by a powerful creator, well, the creator makes more sense. And then if we were to say, okay, if this is before matter and energy and time and so on, what does this sound like? Well, it sounds okay. It sounds like it's some sort of cause that's immaterial and um, timeless and so on. Sounds like that. And then if you were to say, okay, personal or a personal cause or an abstract object, okay, abstract object doesn't make any sense. So personal, powerful creator, that makes sense. And so I agree with every step that, yeah, that the claim you're making makes more sense than the alternative. In fact, usually makes much more sense. And so the real question is, once you start talking about a timeless cause of a universe coming into being, or what it even means to be, a timeless immaterial cause or something like that, or the question. Well, let me put it this way: if you're saying, hey, the only things that we're aware of that could fit the description of the cause would be an abstract object or a personal agent. Well, abstract object doesn't make any sense. That doesn't mean that there aren't other things that we can't think of. And so the argument here is basically, in our experience, the only thing that we're familiar with that could fill this role would be a personal, really powerful cause. And so the question then becomes, how skeptical are you, and how much do you think that there is out there that we don't know, that we might not be familiar with, especially when you're talking about like causing time and space itself. So notice, I mean,
Here's
I
something funny to think about.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I thought
No, go ahead.
so.
That was
Here's
basically my
something.
basic point.
Here's something interesting, and here's something funny to think about. Something just to use your imagination. Uh, it's weird to think about, but imagine that that the universe that we have. Imagine there is a big blob, right? That is at a center from our perspective, and from this big blob, which has existed forever, um, other blobs, other worlds come into existence all the time and distance themselves from the blob. So it comes into existence, starts as basically nothing, a little singularity, and as it moves away from that blob, it begins to expand as it regains its own ability to expand into infinity and push itself away from all the other uh, all the other worlds that come into existence, also shot away from that blob, which explains why that specific world, that specific universe that came out of that blob, expands from a certain point, or moves away from a certain point, but that universe itself also expands infinitely, which is why everything within this universe also expands from a certain point, right? So that there is also a center of our universe from which everything began to expand. Why is this not possible? Why is it not possible that the space and time that we have in our universe is the result of this little blob that came out of the major blob shooting out and expanding, but there are also different universes. That there is a multiverse, an infinite multiverse, and at the center of it there is just an infinitely existing blob that has been there forever, for which when did it begin to exist is an implausible question. It doesn't make sense. It was always there. Why is this not possible?
I mean, there are plenty of people who defend the multiverse, and then there are actually multiverse versions of the Kalam cosmological argument, arguing that those things that are subject to physical laws would face the same issue. I did notice because guys, we want to try to be consistent. We're not going to be perfectly consistent here, but I did notice an inconsistency once with it was Richard Dawkins debating John Lennox, and when Dawkins was arguing, was discussing the cosmological argument, he was saying that as you move back in time, you get to simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler things until you're down to a little singularity. And he goes, simple little singularity. And he says, and what do Christians want to do? They want to say, oh, what caused that? Well, this really powerful being. And he says, you don't want to go back and go to something way more complicated in order to explain something simple. And so that's how he responded to the cosmological argument. If you're going back in time and you're getting to something simpler, why then bring something massively more complicated into it? But then when he was explaining cosmological fine-tuning, so why the laws of the universe are actually equipped for supporting life, he says, well, there's a multiverse, so we could just be one of many, many universes and so on. It's like, wait a minute. So you're saying don't go back to something way more complicated, but then you're going to this infinite array of alternate universes in order to explain ours. And it's like, okay, pick your rule here, because if you're saying, hey, you can't go back to if you shouldn't go back to something way more complicated to explain what we see here, then you don't get to do that either. But
so,
yes,
see, it seems contradictory. But here is the thing: like when I do this, for example, when I bring up a different hypothesis that seems a little bit absurd, but that is why is it not possible, right? Then the whole purpose of that is to say, I'm not claiming that is the reality, or that this is the best explanation that we have. I'm merely saying, if you want to
you have to
come
rule
to me,
that out. You have to rule that
yeah,
out if you're saying
yeah,
God.
yeah. If you want to come to me and say that there is an almighty creator who is the origin of everything, then why would I not? Why would we have to rule that out? I mean, why not this? Why not all the other theories in existence? I'm not making any claims. I'm not saying this one is more likely than that one. But why not all the others instead of just that? That seems like a wrong application of the of Occam's razor, which is just so popular on both sides of this whole discussion, where we come to the universe coming into existence, instead of then concluding, okay, it came into existence out of something, and we that's all we know. We don't know enough to come to the most reasonable answer here. We jump to a certain conclusion. But why are we doing that? I don't do that. I say we don't know. There are many possibilities, and I can't build my life around a certain conclusion that I come to and then just rely on that. I have to leave it open because I simply do not know. And the way I think about it is, my best answer to the biggest question that we have is, I don't know. We will find out. I will certainly not find out in my lifetime. That's the problem. I can spend my whole lifetime thinking and talking about these things. I will most certainly not come to a conclusive answer
You
and say,
might, you
okay,
might,
I know
you might
for
get,
certain.
you might get way smarter.
Yeah. So all I can do is I can play with these thoughts and listen to different ideas and explore them and all of that. But it is better for me, in my opinion. It is more ideal to say I don't know than to say okay, I'll go with this idea and I believe that, because that makes me uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable to stick with an idea that I do not know uh, to be true. I would rather just admit that I don't know and then go ahead with that.
And by the
Yeah.
way, everything we've said that's critical of the Kalam, or any weaknesses we're pointing out, I'm sure all of that's been pointed out to defenders of the argument, and that they've offered responses,
Yeah.
and that their responses have been criticized by other people. And so, mainly, this is like an introduction for people, if this is new to you and so on. Get the main what the main idea is, to understand the argument, decide whether it's something you want to look into more, and if so, there's plenty of stuff out there. But let me just get the two quick summaries, and then we'll wrap it up. This is from the animated video, The Cosmological Argument. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. So if something begins to exist, it must be caused to exist. And the second premise is the universe began to exist, and Craig argues for that scientifically and philosophically, mathematically. And the conclusion does follow. The conclusion follows. If those first two premises are true, the conclusion that the universe has a cause does follow. But notice that you still have a lot more to argue. You have to argue that the cause of the universe fits the description of God. And so, yeah, that's kind of, it's a question of how reasonable you think those premises are. I think those premises are reasonable. It looks to me like that's where the evidence points, but I would agree with some others that there's room for questioning whether our faculties are reliable in these areas. And let me just put up one more on a different way to formulate the argument. So you can see here the possibilities. So you start with the universe. The universe exists. And notice from there you have two possibilities. Two possibilities: no beginning or a beginning. So either the universe goes back to, for all eternity and has no beginning, or it has a beginning. And so what you can do is you can scratch out the no beginning part, because the argument goes, we know scientifically, or at least we have very good reasons, scientifically, philosophically, mathematically, to reject the claim that the universe has no beginning. And so what would you conclude? You conclude, well, therefore it has a beginning. Okay, so the universe has a beginning. Now you have two further possibilities. Well, if the universe had a beginning, then it's either uncaused or it's caused. And so the claim there would be, it's absurd to think of a universe coming into existence and not being caused to exist by something else. And so you'd say that doesn't work, and therefore the universe is caused. And once you've concluded that the universe is caused, the question then becomes, is the cause of the universe personal or impersonal? If it's impersonal, what could it possibly be? And I think that's where you'd fit in what AP is saying about, like possibility of a multiverse or something like that. So that would be like an impersonal cause. If there's something before our universe that causes our universe. And so the question is, can you then apply Kalam argument reasoning to the multiverse itself? But if you conclude that the cause of the universe can't be impersonal, and Craig makes arguments for that this is, time and space and everything have a beginning there, and therefore all you're left with is abstract objects or some personal, timeless, spaceless agent, and you conclude that it's personal. So if you in logic, this would be a series of disjunctive syllogisms. A disjunctive syllogism is A or B, not A, therefore B. So it's either this or this. It's not one, therefore it has to be the other. So if you wanted to state this in, as a series of syllogisms, you would say either the universe had no beginning or it had a beginning. It's not the case that it had no beginning, therefore it had a beginning. And then from there you'd say, either the beginning of the universe is uncaused or it's caused. Well, it's not uncaused, therefore it's caused, and so on. And so that would be the reasoning there. All right, so that is an introduction to the Kalam Cosmological Argument and our initial thoughts on it. And we could, in theory, eventually have someone, whether on either side of the argument, or maybe both, to come in and answer some of our thoughts on this.
Yeah.
All right, anything else before we go ahead and close out, AP?
By the way, these shows are basically lectures, and they cost $50 per viewer. So, just kidding. No, that pretty much covers it. And yeah.
And also notice we're not freaking out and throwing a tantrum here. Christian and atheist examining an argument for theism, and we're not flipping out. See how easy that is, ladies and gentlemen?
This is a perfect way of engaging with each other's ideas, where we can sit down and talk about each other's ideas, question them, instead of fighting and chest thumping and saying, "Come in person, debate me. Where's your location?" and so on.
Yeah. So guys, stop being programmed to hate everyone who disagrees with you, and to freak out at the very idea that anyone disagrees. And what? Oh, someone thinks differently from me and isn't completely identical to everything I think. I have to destroy him. Grow up. If you have a point to make to other people, then make your point and see where that goes. Catch y'all next time.
We'll do that. See you.